Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. 2 years ago, I made a video called Monstrum 99% Guide, and it turns out that there's an audience for that. I think that's a testament to how starved the community is for new content. All these years without any updates, and since Team Junkfish has announced a sequel, it's a pretty dreary future in store for the first game. That's what I'm gonna go with anyway, since I have no business getting over 1,000 views on a video. Listen, I would never, ever upload a video solely to chase views. I wouldn't stoop so low as to add a video to my most popular series just because I know that it'll get views and Okay, but seriously, I really do want to remake this video, and not just for views. There were a lot of things I said that I either don't agree with anymore. I am going to beat the scares out of this game, alright? Boom! Unscarified. Alright, next thing to unscarify. Wow, man. You're so cool. And a liar. Or are just flat out wrong. And since a sequel will be coming out in just a month, I think now would be a great time to reflect on the first game, and create a guide that's both accurate and helpful for people who are going to be picking this game up soon after playing the sequel. So here's some basic info. Monstrum is a roguelike horror game about escaping a cargo ship called the Hisamaru. There's also a monster that will roam the ship and attempt to kill the player on sight. One of 3 monsters are chosen at the start of each run: the Brute, the Hunter, or the Fiend. Each monster has different stats, I guess, and weaknesses for the player to exploit. I'll go into more depth on each monster in a later section. The player has to find items to repair an escape route. The routes are a life raft, a helicopter, and a submarine. There really isn't much more to say here in this overview, so I guess it's time to start chipping away at sections, starting with story. I was a bit lazy in my original video about this section, as was pointed out to me in the comments. Anyway, the story takes a bit of a backseat in this game. You can find scattered notes and audio logs that tell the story of the people who were on the ship before you. Your own identity is also a secret, but based on your clothing, which can be seen in detail in the earlier versions of the game, which featured photo death screens, you are probably one of the crewmates. One thing that I really appreciate about the story is that it works no matter which monster is active in your current canon. You see, there's only one active monster on the ship per playthrough, so it's like there are 3 separate universes. However, the notes and audio logs never actually give enough detail to specify which monster it is, so the developers didn't have to write an entirely separate series of notes depending on the current canon. The closest we get is note 17. It talks about 2 specimens. Specimen 1 exhibits muscle growth and aggression, which very much points to the Brute. Specimen 2 has increased brain activity and cellular repair, which I think is supposed to be the Fiend, since I don't really associate brain activity with the Hunter.
Level at 50%.
But then where did the Hunter come from? Honestly, I don't want to go too much into theory crafting for this video, since most people are probably here for gameplay assistance. But I would recommend looking through your notes and audio logs, which carry over even after dying, to see what you can come up with. Oh, and if you need to go to the wiki to understand what the captain's logs are saying, then know that you're not alone.
Captain's log dated 10th of February 1977. The Hisamaru is currently docked in Hong Kong awaiting final clearance from Mr. Kobayashi to his port. We are 2 days behind our original waiting date with no real reason given.
Except, oh wait, even they couldn't understand what this guy was saying. Hopefully that was a good non-spoilery look at the story. There are 21 notes and 12 audio logs to collect, and once you pick them up, they can be viewed on the title screen in the collectibles section. Let's get into some gameplay now, shall we? Since Monstrum is a roguelike, the level and items that spawn are randomly generated. The bulk of the game is exploring the ship to find these items. Although a lot of the details such as rooms are randomized, there are still a few areas that will stay consistent across all playthroughs. These locations are the 3 escape route locations, the engine room, the bridge, the main hallways of the cargo hold and surrounding lower decks, stairs, and everything on the exterior deck. I'm pretty sure that's what it'd be called. Everything else is like a jigsaw piece that's snapped into place. You can find a list of all the individual rooms on their wiki. Most rooms have item spawn locations, although there's no guarantee that every room will have items, and most of them have hiding spots that can be used to escape the monster. While exploring, I would recommend keeping one hiding spot open in every room you find. This will reduce the time it takes to get into your hiding spot if you ever need to get there quickly. I would also recommend getting used to the locations of those consistent areas, since they can act as landmarks to make sure you don't get lost, and can keep track of what areas you have and have not scavenged. Along the way, you'll find 3 different types of traps. Pitfall traps can be found anywhere in the upper decks, which look like rusted metal plates covering a hole in the ground. These will cause you to fall over if you sprint on them. If you fall, you can usually get up in about 1.5 seconds. If you need to get over them without slowing down though, you can jump over them. Cameras can also be found everywhere in the upper decks. They'll rotate in place and will make a beeping sound if they spot you. If you can't get out of their line of sight in time, they'll trigger an alarm, alerting anything with ears to your location. These can be disabled with duct tape, or you can stand just beneath them and they can't see you. The last type of trap is steam. These appear in the lower decks, and will always be near the helicopter on either side. In the lower decks, there will be a red valve next to all of them that can be used to permanently disable them. The ones near the helicopter can't be turned off, but they can be moved to block the other set of stairs on that side. Alternatively, you can complete a secondary objective in the engine room to turn off all of the steam at once, aside from the helicopter ones. But to do that, you'll need some help from the monster. Oh, yeah. I don't know if this also counts as a trap, but I'll just say it here. Don't fall off of this platform by the life raft. Falling from this height will kill you instantly, even though I think this is the only place in the game where a drop like this is possible. I just find it kind of weird that it's a mechanic.
Escape the ship. Okay, I can do that. I can do that. No!
Thanks, Mark. I mentioned hiding spots before, which can be helpful for when you get cornered. Hiding spots include lockers, tables, desks, and low cabinets that can be crawled into. If your hiding spot has a door on it of any kind, make sure you close it before the monster sees it open. Also, it's important to note that these things in the engine room, I don't even know what they are, but they count as hiding spots. It took me a while to realize that. The way the game decides which spot the monster looks in is actually based on a few things. For one, if the monster sees you enter a spot, that takes priority over everything else. They will check that spot and you will die, no matter what. If the monster only saw you enter the room, but not where you went after, the probability changes depending on how many times you've hidden from the monster before. If it's the first time, they will always check the wrong spot. Even if there's only one place you could be, it doesn't matter. The odds of you successfully hiding have nothing to do with the surroundings. It took doing this 4 times for the brute here to wisen up and, check the place I have to be. Another thing is audio. Walking and running footsteps can definitely be heard by the monster. Crouching probably can too, but I've had a hard time getting in a situation where they aren't outrunning my crouch speed. I'm sure there's a small radius where they can hear that though. Certain items have the only purpose of making noise, which usually do a much better job as a distraction than your feet. I'll talk about all of the items in a minute. A lot of people seem to think that everything that makes noise can be heard by the monster. This is definitely not true. The sound of closing a locker or cabinet is one of the most obnoxiously loud things in the world. but they won't enter the room unless something else has tipped them off. Same goes for doors opening and closing, and cameras preparing to trip the alarm. People will often claim that each monster behaves differently, but other than the hunter having extra AI behaviors to enter and exit vents, I haven't noticed much of a difference. They seem to all follow the same rules when it comes to hiding spots at least. So just remember that no matter what, you probably, most likely, maybe if I'm not wrong, get a freebie escape on your first time hiding. But look at me, this is supposed to be a general monster section, and I've already started getting into specifics. I guess that's my cue to get on to the next section. The face of Monstrum. The guy you've probably seen before on the promotional material. The Brute. The man is loud, to say the least. Loud and fast. The fastest monster in the game if you don't count teleportation. The Brute really likes to make his presence known. His footsteps can be heard from separate floors of the ship, and he'll sometimes just yell for no reason.
It would seem he's bought a new residence in LA and figured he could use his own boat as free transportation. I guess you want to know what's inside.
Supposedly this is because he ran into steam. I don't know for sure, but I mean it makes a lot more sense than no reason at all. His face has a giant orange light on it too, so even if you're deaf, you can know he's coming from a mile away.
I need to inflate it, and I need to get duck. See it coming. He's got a light on his face! He's got a lighty face! He's got a face light!
Thanks, Mark. You might wonder how he could possibly catch you off guard if he's so obvious. But once you play against him, you realize that that's one of his greatest strengths. The sound of his footsteps seems to envelop you when they get close enough. Unless he's just on the other side of a wall, you can't really pinpoint his location through sound alone. It might take a moment of spinning around to get a rough idea of his direction, worsened by the fact that his footsteps almost sound like they're above you when he's really close, which is just something that you'll have to learn how to distinguish. And his light is useful in places like the cargo hold with long straight hallways, but in a claustrophobic place like the upper decks, the light usually can't help until it's too late. His overwhelming presence instead works to keep you from moving, second-guessing yourself if you ever do decide to try to run away. What if you're just running into him? In a chase, the Brute is the most capable of keeping up with you. The other monsters rely on catching the player off guard or slowing you down, while the Brute just really hates doors. Like, why did you just do that? Why did you break that door? There's not even a lock on that thing. How do you even know I'm out here? I'm just out here doing my daily reading. You need to chill out, dude. Don't try to lock a door to stop him, since he can easily break it down, leaving nothing to block line of sight if you need to hide in that room again. As you can see here, he destroys this door. He'll sometimes just break down doors for the hell of it, and he moves very quickly towards anywhere he hears a noise, so I hope you have a quick escape plan if you accidentally turn on a radio. Since he's the fastest monster, only being slightly slower than the player, he gets to where he wants to go really fast when motivated. When calmly patrolling though, he moves very slowly. Beating the Brute requires the player to be what he is not, smart and perceptive. You need to always have a good grasp on your surrounding area, and logically conclude where he is based on the sounds you hear. You can also hear pitfall traps being triggered by the Brute if he decides to run over them, which is a very useful hint to his location on the off chance that it happens. Sound distractions are very effective against him, since he moves very quickly towards them. That's of course a bad thing if you didn't mean to make a noise, but a skilled player can use that to get him to vacate an area they want to search. Oh, and before we move on, I would like to point out that you should not try to use fire on him. It's kind of his thing. The Hunter is, in many ways, opposite to the Brute. sneaking and setting traps to catch you off guard rather than running at every noise in the vicinity. They can give an atmosphere of unease, that you're always being watched, and that something is waiting to jump out from the nearest vent at any moment. In reality, the hunter may be one of the monsters. It may be one of the monsters, honestly, I don't know. In reality, the hunter may be one of the easiest monsters to deal with. They have a few big strengths, and one of them is the vents. When I mentioned teleportation earlier, I was referencing the hunter. Whenever they're in the vents, they always might as well be right next to the player at all times. Anytime a loud noise happens, such as a camera setting off the alarm, the hunter will jump out of a nearby vent, provided they aren't currently roaming somewhere else. So if the player makes a mistake, the hunter will have a very high chance of being able to capitalize on it. The second mechanic introduced by the hunter is egg sacs. These are traps that spawn around the ship if the player hasn't been chased in a while. These things appear so fast that you could enter a room, find nothing, and by the time you exit the room there could be several lining the hallway you just went through. There are also permanent egg sacs that spawn in the cargo hold. Some egg sacs are what we will call active, and some we will call inactive. There is no way to tell which are which by just looking at them. When the player approaches an active egg sac, the hunter will burst out of it, and instantly begin chase, even if the player breaks line of sight before the hunter starts running after them. This will despawn all non-permanent egg sacs in the environment. The description of this monster might have the opposite effect that describing the brute did, where this all seems pretty overpowered, and would make the hunter very difficult to escape. So why did I say that they were the easiest monster? Well, the problem is that the player has a lot of control over them. Unless the player makes a mistake, like setting off a camera, the hunter won't be a threat for the majority of the run. They're also very slow in chase, so even if they jump out of a vent right in front of you, it's easy to get away so long as you react quick enough. How long do you get to react, you ask? Way longer than you're probably thinking. Not only are the egg sacs easy to see, even if they jump out of an inconspicuous vent, they have to sit there and scream for a second, really announcing themselves and ruining any element of surprise they had. I think it would have been better if the only sound they made was a very quiet vent opening, didn't scream when they saw you, and didn't have any chase music. Then this would have been a completely different story. As it currently stands though, the hunter is just a stealthy monster that constantly gives their position away. If you watched my 99% guide, you probably know my stance on the Fiend.
Number one scariest enemy of all time.
Yeah, I still feel that way, but I want to go into why I think that is. So far in this video, I've been talking about things from a very mechanical perspective. Defining egg sacs as active or non-active, knowing that your running speed is faster than the monster. These are things that I know are reliable and can trust will always be true. The Fiend is the only monster that I don't have any foolproof strategy for. This is probably why I find the Fiend scarier than any monster. I have things to focus on against the others, but with the Fiend I just feel alone and lost. That doesn't mean there's nothing I can say about the Fiend though, there's actually quite a lot. Let's start off with warning signs. The most obvious one is flickering lights. There's a ring around the Fiend in which any electronic lights flicker. This doesn't include glow sticks in the lighter, but it does include flashlights, making it almost a must-have against the Fiend. Anytime you're in a dark area, like the containers in the cargo hold, it's a good idea to occasionally click on your flashlight to see if it's flickering. If it is, get out of there using the most direct path possible. Avoid corners and change floors, since a flickering light will only affect lights on the same floor as the Fiend. This makes stairs really dangerous, since you won't get much of a warning until they're right on top of you. Luckily, they do have an audio cue. In a very small radius around them, you can hear a weird electronic hum sound. This can be heard from other floors, but only if they're right above or below you. Because the Fiend floats, there are no footstep noises to listen out for, so it's difficult to tell what direction they're coming from. It's important to note the difference between lights flickering because they feel like it, and the ones that are close to the Fiend. You can tell the Fiend is close by because the lights cut all the way to complete darkness. If they still give off a small amount of light when they flicker, then don't worry about them, it means nothing. There's a lot of strategy to the Fiend just based on the light flickering mechanic, which leads to a lot of improv on the player's part. You can't just run away from them in a straight line, since the Fiend can stun you if you're in their line of sight for too long, shown by purple tendrils appearing on the sides of your vision. Sometimes you may have to duck into a side room for a moment to let the tendrils die down before continuing to run. If you tank the stun, remember that you will always lose distance even if you don't stop running. So it's always better to round corners and keep out of line of sight. The Fiend was the third monster developed, and it shows through the amount of detail and care that went into its design, and how tricky they can be to deal with even though they really only add 2 new mechanics. One of the Fiend's biggest weaknesses is locked doors. They have to telekinetically unlock the door before opening it, which gives the player enough time to relock the door and have infinite time to come up with a plan. Unfortunately, doors with locks on them aren't everywhere on the ship, and if you're on the side of the door that can be locked, that usually means you're backed into a room, so good luck with that, man. So that's everything I have to say about the Fiend. The best way to combat them is avoidance. Stay on the opposite side of the ship in open areas as much as possible. Don't give them the chance to catch you off guard. It's much easier to get away in places like the helipad, a big open area with places to quickly change floors. Good luck dealing with this thing. You'll pretty much have to rely on experience too. I'm gonna make my job easy here. Boom! My item tier list. Let's move from top to bottom. In S tier we have our Lord and Savior, the duct tape. This miracle wrap will solve all of your troubles and then some. It's the only escape objective item that has some use outside of its objective. You know those annoying as hell cameras in the upper decks? Well, you won't have to once you finally have the power to shut them up. Stride through the upper decks without the fear of being yelled at for existing. Just make sure you cover as many cameras as possible before using it to tape up the life raft, since it only gets completely consumed when you do that. Next is fuses. These are your keys to opening power-locked rooms, or can be used to power sections of the ship. I never found much use powering floors, since the green emergency lights illuminate the place just fine, and still react to the Fiend. But you do need one of these for the submarine, so I guess what I said before about the duct tape being the only one is kind of wrong. But I think they're just reversed. The duct tape is an objective item that happens to have a secondary use. The fuse's main use is powering things, but has a secondary use of powering an escape route. The game even knows this thing is important, since you're given one in your starting room at the beginning of every run. Take this mercy from the devs. Backpacks aren't really items so much as stat boosts for your character, making this the only item in the game that just makes you better by having it. It gives you 2 extra inventory slots, no more, no less. I wouldn't say they're strictly necessary for beating the game. So long as you drop off objective items at the objective frequently enough, you shouldn't be too tight in storage space. But why not? Why not just make yourself better? There are only 2 of these things on the ship, so when you enter a room and there's just a backpack sitting there, it almost feels like it's a trap. Like you really should have had to try harder for this, but nope, take it. Why not? All the way down here, which is how I'm representing the gap in quality between these tiers, are almost all of the escape key items, and the flashlight. The escape items are pretty self-explanatory, you need them to win, so they had to be high. The flashlight is up here because it is hands down the best light source in the game. You don't need anything else. The flashlight casts light down long hallways, which can make seeing the translucent hunter a bit easier. It's affected by the Fiend's light flickering mechanic, being the only light source item in the game to do this. You are also always given one at the start of each run for free, and finding more is fairly easy. It can also be turned off, so even though it technically has less of a lifespan than glow sticks, you can extend that out to the entire playthrough by just being careful with using it. I mean, it's not like the battery is that limited, just don't waste it. Next, in B tier, are the items that aren't really necessary for survival, but can definitely help. And those two sons of bitches, we'll get to them. So the egg timer is a very handy distraction item. Using it will cause a 30-second countdown to begin, and when the time expires, the egg timer will ring 3 times. The biggest strength of the egg timer is the 30-second countdown. Because you can drop it after setting the timer, and it'll keep ticking down, you can get the monster to go to a location you were in a long time ago, as opposed to other noise items, which make the noise very close, if not on your location. Against the hunter, it's suicide to use the alternate items, since they can just pop out of a vent and chase you as soon as the noise happens. This also can be used to find out which monster you're dealing with. Put the egg timer in a place like the life raft area, and watch what happens through the window on a higher floor. No danger, and you can see which monster you have. The fire extinguisher is the best stun item in my opinion. Not much to say about it, just spray the monster if they're close to you, and you have time to get away. There's a cooldown on the monster though, so don't try to keep spraying them over and over. They're also really common. You can probably find like 3 of them on the upper decks in under 20 seconds. Alright, I'm gonna try to do my own challenge. I'm gonna see how many fire extinguishers I can get. I haven't been in the upper decks at all in this run. Let's go. Let's go, gamers. We're going in. We're going in. Oh no, the monster's behind me. The monster's behind me. I gotta find a fire okay, that was a bad example. Okay, we're trying to get in here. Attempt 2. Let's find a please give me a fire extinguisher somewhere. Come on, the place was overflowing with these on my practice run. There's none. There are no fire extinguishers. Oh, there's one. Boom! I proved my point. I proved my point right there. Looks like my high score is 1. Alright, see if you can beat my high score. That was in about a minute. So you get a minute. You get a minute to find as many fire extinguishers as possible. I bet you won't be able to find as many as I did. Yeah. They're also the only stun item that works on every monster, meaning you can pick this up knowing you'll always have a use for it. Just don't try to actually put out fires with it. That doesn't work, obviously. Now we're at these guys. The submarine headlight. For whatever reason the devs came up with, works differently than all other key items. Usually there are 2 copies of each, but the headlight just didn't feel like waking their twin up in the morning, so now there's only 1 of them. Worse still, unlike most items on the ship, it can be found anywhere. I haven't noticed if there's even a place it's more likely to spawn, so just search the entire ship for an item that there's only 1 of. Out of all the items, why did it have to be the one where it makes sense for there to be 2 of them? The bolt cutters. The bolt cutters! It's time to talk about the bolt cutters. Okay, so the sub headlight is one thing, right? It can spawn anywhere and there's only 1 of them. Fine, cool, at least I know the rules. But the bolt cutters. You wanna know what's so bad about the bolt cutters? Well, sometimes they decide that they're really not feeling it today. Sometimes they just don't show up to work. They wait for you to have every other helicopter item prepared, and waiting at the helipad, you check the shopping list. Bolt cutters. Sure, that's doable, except it isn't. I don't know if there's a bug or what, but it's really annoying, and can single-handedly cripple a run. So I'd say, don't go for the helicopter escape until you already have bolt cutters, just to make sure it's actually possible. Another helicopter item is in C tier, the keys. They're just hard to find, honestly. I think I was feeling really salty towards them when I made this list, cause now I'd honestly put them above the abomination that is bolt cutters. It's a small key, and it can be found in drawers sometimes, which are just kind of tedious to search through. Yeah, these don't deserve to be in C tier. But you know what does? The radio. The radio is fine, okay? It works. I just really don't see why you would use it over the egg timer. Like the egg timer, you can activate it in your hand. Except, it starts making noise as soon as you do it, rather than having a timer. Don't do this against the hunter. Sure, you can drop it and run away, but that's just extra risk. It has the benefit of staying on forever until you turn it off or the monster breaks it. meaning that you usually only get to use it once before it's gone forever. I don't know, man. It's like the keys. I see the value, they're just kind of meh. I don't like looking for the keys, and I don't like having to work around the radio. At least you can use the radio to open up broken doors by throwing it through, but at that point you're literally just trading the radio for a better item. Wouldn't it have been better if you just got the better item from the start? D tier only has one item, the glow stick. The glow stick is a light source, but like with the radio, there's just a much better alternative. The strengths of the glow stick are that there are a lot of them and that they stay illuminated forever when you turn them on. The best use I found for them is dropping them on floors I know I've already searched, and that's a fine purpose, except that I just remember where I've searched through, or I look for signs like all the doors being open or finding the place familiar. The glow stick is just kinda clutter for your inventory. Unless you don't trust your memory for whatever reason, I'd say avoid picking them up. F tier is for items that I just don't understand at all. Breakables come in three forms: bottles, glasses, and mugs. All function the same way though. You throw them, and they make noise where they land. These things just barely work at all in my experience. As you can see in this clip, I tried to use a breakable to be kinda smart against the brute, but he still ended up just catching me around this corner. Now, let me tell you, if the brute sees through your plan, you know you've messed up. It's also just kind of pointless. If you're in a position where you could throw one of these and you're out of sight of the monster, just stay put or crouch away. The monster won't find you unless you make a noise, which throwing a smashable might do. The worst thing about them is that you can't drop them without breaking them, so picking one up is a commitment, both of an inventory spot and that you will want to make a noise when you choose to get rid of it. It feels like the devs put this in just to increase the technical item count by 3. If you made use of them, then that's great. Just don't expect me to start trying. The lighter is dumb. The lighter is bad. The lighter is a light source which basically gives off no light. So I'll move on to its only other use, which is setting fires. Using gas canisters will cause you to start dripping gasoline on the ground. You can use this to create walls of fire after dropping an active lighter on it. The fire lasts for a few seconds before going out. If you're against the hunter, the fire actually has a really interesting effect, as it will completely pacify it. It can't kill you until it returns to a vent and comes back out. The brute and fiend don't care as much. The fiend gets stopped by it, but they'll just wait it out. The brute straight up ignores it. Now, I have to ask, why would you use this? The only time I could see this being remotely useful is against the hunter, and even then, it can just try to chase you again later. Why would you stop everything that you're doing to set this up, just to get a single stun out of it? You could have been looking for items. You could have been running away from the monster instead of standing there, waiting for them to get close, and lighting a little campfire for them. Why would you waste an inventory slot for so long, just for one stun? Sure, you can reuse the lighter, but not the fuel, and there are only 5 canisters on the ship. So just, no, it's terrible. It's funny to stun the hunter with this once, sure, but if you want to win, leave the lighter in that drawer. In flare gun tier, we have the flare gun, what I think is the worst item in the game. To explain why, I'll first have to explain my general strategy. I rarely pick up items to stun the monster. Unless I'm getting footage for a video, I don't really need it. Sometimes I'll grab a fire extinguisher if I'm bored, but like I said before, if I'm playing to win, there's no point in grabbing them. In order to stun the monster, you have to go out of your way to set up a situation to do it. That setup time could have been spent scavenging, or getting away from the monster unseen. It's also very unlikely that you can stun the monster and get away without a chase, which kinda defeats the point of stunning them. I know it's possible to stun them and get away, but at that point, why didn't you just run away from the start and avoid risking getting close to the monster? The flare gun on paper sounds like an amazing item. A ranged stun option that requires no setup? Count me in! This is a trap. I'm sorry, I can't bring myself to recommend picking this up. For one, the cost. You will almost always have to either use a fuse to open a power-locked room, or get the monster to bash open a broken door to get this thing. That's the setup right there. And it requires sometimes that you get rid of an S tier item to pick it up. If not that, it will waste your time waiting for the monster to open the door up for you. Whatever, Mr. Pickle.
Mr. Pickle.
I hear you say. Once I have the flare gun, surely it will be worth it. I wish, my child, I really do. The flare gun has 3 shots, with no way to get more. That's 3 stuns on a monster that... I mean, if you're using the flare gun on them and not a fire extinguisher, they were probably far enough away that you didn't need to stun them. You could have just outran them. And in that scenario, you don't have to waste precious inventory space on an item that doesn't even work against a third of the cast. Team Junkfish knew exactly what they were doing. They even made an achievement for wasting it, and forced me to pick up this worthless piece of junk. Take my advice. If the monster is far enough away that you wouldn't use a fire extinguisher on them, you don't need to stun them. Just run. And that's all of them. I know, it surprised me how few items there are too. Obviously this list is my opinion, which I shouldn't have to say, but you know, someone will yell at me in the comments if I don't put the O word here. This is based on what I have found most useful when it comes to just surviving. If you want to meme and throw a bunch of breakables at the monster, or draw a penis with gasoline and light it on fire, then you do you. And, wait, I'll have to do those things now to get footage for this section. God damn. Here I'll put a bunch of random tips that didn't fit anywhere else. This might get a bit rapid fire, so get ready. You can drop down the platform by the life raft if you open this door. Just make sure you land on it and you'll live. The monster can't go down this way, so it's an easy way to instantly escape them. When the monster grabs you out of a hiding spot, if they didn't see you enter it, they will throw you on the ground rather than insta-killing you. Make sure you're ready to press space or whatever the controller equivalent is to get up. Each monster has a different kill animation depending on if you're facing them standing, not facing them standing, crouched, or prone. This won't help you survive, it's just kinda cool. The brute actually moves faster than you for a second when he breaks down doors. It's some sort of charge attack, so make sure you're still not closing doors against him unless it's to break line of sight. You can survive being hit by steam if you run into it, but if it turns on with you directly in front of it, it'll be able to stun lock and kill you. Monsters can see you through stairs. The objective Power the Crane for the life raft is bugged, and will always spawn completed. The secondary objective in the engine room is completed by powering the engine room, then using the phone system to call Phone 2. This will cause the monster to break the door to that room, and give you access to a valve that turns off all of the steam in the lower decks. Monsters don't react to light sources you're holding. You can hold an active glow stick or flashlight while hiding, and it doesn't seem to tip them off at all. The monster rubber bands to your location pretty hard, so make sure you're always moving to stay ahead of them. And try not to backtrack the same way you came. Unless it's the hunter, then this doesn't matter at all. The raspberry jam on the edges of your screen isn't for show. The Fiend stun actually deals damage, and can kill you if you're bad. Did you know that the hunter is a girl? Yeah, who cares. Hold down the drop item button to throw the item. How far it goes depends on the item. Any item that you throw off of the ship will poof back into existence where it spawned. So don't worry, you won't lose your one submarine headlight. I just hope you remember where it was. Stuck in a corner with the monster right behind you? Pick up a chair and start swinging. They might be impressed by your might and leave you alone. Try it out yourself. Wait, conclusion? I'm done? Yes! Thank you everyone for watching this video. I hope it was a bit more helpful than my 99% guide, which I'm only not taking down so this video doesn't reference something inaccessible. When Monstrum 2 comes out, I'll definitely be covering it somehow. If it's good, I might even make a sequel to this video. I just hope they don't abandon it like they did with the first game. If you look on the wiki, you can see people theory crafting about a random mask that appears in the cargo hold, and coming up with ways it could work if it was a usable item. Seriously, there's an entire page on a background element that has nothing supporting that has any significance at all. That's what happens when you starve your community for content. Kinda like my channel. So that concludes my 100% guide to Monstrum. I'd like to thank everyone for getting my channel to, as of now, 71 subscribers. Don't worry, I took a screenshot of the funny number. I'd like to think that my video quality has improved greatly since I made that original guide, and I hope you all agree. As always, if you disagree with anything in this video, or know another tip that I didn't know, please leave a comment. It's time to give my future editing self a break. Goodbye everyone. Oh, and happy holidays, since that's probably around when this video will go up, right? Christmas? It's Christmas. Yep, that's